Ah, we got some Ganon. Not Ganondorf, but actual Ganon. Marco says, "Hi, Follygon. I'm a fan of yours." Well, thank you, man. This is my first character sculpt, and I'd truly like to get it critiqued by you. The model is not posed yet, and is lacking the sword in each hand. I'd like to receive suggestions and direction about the general look of it. Shapes, gesture, anatomy, silhouette, details, polish. What to improve upon, and how to make my next sculpts look better. Well, I'd say the first thing that stands out to me here is proportions and pose. So I know he's in a neutral pose, but he still feels very stiff. And I say proportions because he feels small. He doesn't feel like the king of evil Ganon, right? Let's see. Ganon N64, because I think this is the N64 Ganon. Wow, Ganon. Ganon? Yeah, that's how you spell that. Is there a well-lit? Oh no, there was a picture right there. So if we look at this dude here, look at... Can I blow that up? Heck yeah, I can. So, oh, you know what? Let's do see-through mode. For those that don't know, there's a little see-through mode up there. And yeah, so look at just the actual, like, the gesture of this dude. He's like hunched over. I think you could work a lot of this into the neutral pose. He's got these really long arms, and his legs are actually pretty long. He's just like really bent. So I would say try to get a lot of that gesture in there. And I think there are some just general proportions that you could start working on. I don't know if this is the exact reference that you're using, right? But I think that in general, these are all good things that I think you could start heading towards here. Let's take a look, other than, you know, just looking at the King of Evil here, taking a look at him, let's look at your actual 3D model and see some areas where you could maybe just improve on as well. So you mentioned in your email, Dasan, what's up, man? You mentioned in your email just shape, gesture, anatomy, silhouette, detail, etc. So everything, all the things. All right, so let's see what you got going on here. You got a bunch of subtools, and you do have some subdivision levels. So let's do Subtool Master, High Resolution Visible. So this will take all your subtools and put them all on the highest subdiv. So I can see what you got going on. Let's take a look at this body. So like stuff like this tail feels like very dinky and kind of stuck on. Whereas if we look at this dude's tail, it's got a lot of this nice taper and stuff going on. One thing that I really like to look for in just a fundamental shape is avoiding parallels wherever necessary. So for something like this tail, I would say, because this is such a simple example, it's just a curve, right? I would say, let's start, come on, bringing this down, go away. Bringing this down, I think you need to lower him to the ground a lot more to also help with this. Let's wrap that up. And the shapes, I'm going to break the shapes up here. It's just inevitable. So we're starting to get a little bit more of a curve there, a little bit nicer. If you're going to rig this, you might want it to be perfectly straight. But even if it is perfectly straight, what I want to see more of is taper. So in your most basic shape, you want to avoid parallels wherever possible. So I'm starting to thicken this up here. He's got this big tail, right? It's got to feel like it can actually connect to the body. So let's like really push this shape a lot more. Start nice and thick, and maybe the connection point for that shouldn't be right on top of his butt. It should be above his butt a little bit, just anatomically, so that makes a little bit more sense. And as we come down here, and this is gonna like screw up my geo here. Use back face masking on our move brush. And now we're starting to get a little bit more kind of thick to thin going on here. And again, I'm going to break a lot of stuff, but that's okay. So now, instead of just coming all the way down here as a parallel line, we're starting to get this nice kind of thick to thin shape, which is how, you know, if you look at a lizard or a pig demon, anything like that is going to have, you know, some similar shape language going on. So avoid parallels if you can, unless it specifically adds to the design in some way. So that's some kind of basic shape language stuff that you want to look for. And sorry for breaking your tail, but it's necessary. Same thing like in places like this, like in the legs. These feel really just kind of stiff. Same thing with the arms. If we look back to our dude here, if we look at how thick these thighs are compared to the lower leg, if I were to, you know, look here, let's say, I can't see, that's 3 units for my transpose line, and then if I were to draw that out for the upper thigh, that's what? Almost 7 units. So the difference in thickness between the upper leg and lower leg is almost double. It's almost twice as thick. So I would say after you start getting more of that gesture in there, really start to push some of these shapes. And not only do you want to push and, you know, work on these shapes and start to think about those proportions a little bit more, but while you're doing that, also be thinking about parallels. So parallel not only means we want to avoid parallel lines, but it also means we want to avoid similar curves in a silhouette. So if you ever look at a human leg, the human leg doesn't, you know, just go up perfectly and it's perfectly, you know, the exact same. It's not like mirrored from one side to the other. There's some asymmetry to that. I have to do it backwards because my brain, I'm always looking head on the leg. So for a human leg, and this will apply to something like this since it's kind of anthropomorphized. Let's go with that. So the upper part of the calf is going to be that hit or break where that major silhouette turn is. It's going to be a little bit higher. So think about stuff like that. And I think just anatomically these are kind of in a little bit of a wonky position here. So I think there's some anatomical stuff that could swap up there. We don't want these shapes. I think you've done a good job kind of like breaking these up. But if we even look where this kind of break line is, first of all, this isn't like the actual shape of your quads. The heads of the muscles tend to wrap a lot more, and the break of this is not, one, it's not this long, and 2, it's not directly in the center of the leg. So this is another kind of thing with like breaking symmetry, avoiding parallels. We don't want this line to ever be, we never want something to be split right down the middle. We want to avoid stuff like that as much as we can. In terms of just like general shape stuff going on here, I would say, like looking at your legs, I think thickening these up is going to really help this character because he's feeling way too thin down here, a little dinky. Whereas that, I mean, look at those big strong legs. He could kick a hole in your chest. Same thing with the arms. I think kind of the same notes there. Let's see. Let's look at some of this stuff. It's pretty cool. I think it's a little bit messy in terms of hard surface stuff. It looks like you actually poly-modeled these. I'm not sure if you did, but what I would recommend doing is coming through with your Z modeler brush in some of these areas and either creasing or beveling some edges. So just so you can see what that looks like really quick with some creases. And for hard surface stuff, you typically want these lines to be, you know, pretty clean. I'm not sure how you made this. It looks like it was poly-modeled, but then again, I think you might have remeshed this. I'm not sure. It kind of looks like manual retopo, but I would come back through with maybe some hard edge stuff like creases or bevels, and I think that'll get you in a cool direction there. What else? What else is really sticking out? Same thing with the horns here, you do have a lot more thick to thin kind of tapering going on here, but I think you could push the shape here a little bit more. Like if we look at the horns here, see how far out they're coming and then they come back in and then swoop up? I think you could push that quite a bit. So if I were to look at this maybe from this angle, I could like really start cranking those out. Cranking. And start to push that shape even more. So I'd play with that as well. Let's see. And then just kind of some general stuff in the face here. A lot going on here. Let me turn some of this off. Make sure that your different shapes are feeling really integrated. This is something that I see a lot, and it's something that's kind of tough to realize that you're doing, but once you do it, you're just like, oh, why did I do that? What was I thinking there? But a lot of these different objects, like let's use the teeth for example, they feel just kind of like they're plopped on there and it feels really unfinished. So what I recommend doing is using something, essentially we want to build up the shape of the gums for where those teeth would pop out. Same thing with the eyes. The eyelids and eyeball feel very just kind of stuck on and not very well integrated. And this is something that is kind of replicated across your model with some of these different pieces of geometry representing hair and some of that stuff as well. So what I would do is maybe come in here and carve a separation between where your gums and lip are. I'm using that damn standard brush that I showed off earlier. And then start to build up the shape of your gums. I actually did this on my stream just the other day. Where is my browser? Head on over to my YouTube channel, youtube.com/Follygon, and in my last video working on the shark pup, mute that. If you take a look at the teeth here, they're kind of just stuck on, and that's because I've worked on this for one day for a couple hours, and I never got to the point where I could integrate those a little bit better. But if we fast forward a little bit here, where am I working on the teeth? Okay, so I'm starting to work on the teeth. 2.5-ish. Okay, here we go. This is what I want you to do. So maybe get a separate piece of geometry for your gums. Maybe you could use a tube insert. I would check out this part. It's like 2:20, 2.5 hours in. And essentially what you do is you take the teeth and you do a negative subtraction Boolean with either Dynamesh or Live Boolean, if you're familiar with that. If you're not, just Google how to use Booleans in Dynamesh and you'll find a tutorial. I have one on my YouTube channel. And I want you to subtract the teeth from the gums. And then from there, I want you to inflate that geometry around the gums. And what you end up getting from doing that is, let me import that model and I'll show you. Just so we can show what the more finished version looks like. So this is the dude that I'm working on over on my channel. Or I guess this is my channel, isn't it? But you can see that the gums feel quite a bit more integrated. So we have like a little build-up around the teeth. Even for something in a simplistic, clean style like this. You want your geometry and subtools to feel really integrated and not just stuck on. So like right now, see how these legs are like very just kind of placeholder-ish stuck on? Eventually I will get to a point where I merge those together and start blending between that transition. But I've already started to work on the area here where that is kind of lining up to make sure that I'm not getting like this super strong like buildup of shape here to where it's going to just like hit perpendicular with that surface. So I've started to line that up a little bit better to make it easier on myself so that when I get to this point, I can just blend those shapes together, probably fill in that form a little bit with a clay brush or trim dynamic or something like that. So that's the only other thing that I would recommend. I think that's going to be enough to kind of push you forward on this dude. But yeah, I'd love to see what you end up doing with this guy if you keep pushing on it, or a future model. But good luck to you, man. Do I critique hard surface models or just organic? Blue Fire asks. Sure, you can send in whatever you want, man. If you want me to take a look, I'd be happy to. We come for the tail breaking, that's right. Gotta break everything. Let me make sure I didn't miss anything else here in chat. Ganon never did skip a That's right. Where'd that concept go? He's This is such a cool character. I love this. Yeah. And like, look how big these hooves are. Hooves. It like creates this really cool dichotomy between, I know this is like a super dark, it's like really hard to see. I don't know if this is a PNG or what, but maybe you can find a little bit better lit version of this. And just like looking how thin his legs get before it like transitions into this big hoof. It's pretty cool. A lot of other cool stuff going on here. Like I said, really work on that like hunched pose and all that good stuff. Cool character, cool character. And good job on this for how far you've gotten. He's pretty neat. I love me some Zelda. One of my favorite game series. And probably like my favorite music of all time. I love Koji Kondo. I actually learned how to play guitar from playing Zelda music. I don't play often anymore though. Babu, what's up, man? All right, I think that's a good point where we can move on to our next model for critique.